What's up, guys? My name is Wes. This is Piece Parts, and in this episode I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a pretty neat little hose reel for air compressor or for cords or for your garden hose, whatever you wanted to do. I'm using mine for my air hose reel, just to kind of tidy up the hose. Before it was just kind of there, just kind of hanging out there. So I'm going to go through some of the stuff that I used to design this. I have a 3D printed part that I made. I've got a piece that I cut out of a 4x4 post. I've got obviously a wheel, and I've got a bearing and some other hardware and stuff. So I'll show you guys all of that, and show you guys what I did to design it and go about it, and then show you the end use. So let's get into it. Okay, so before I even started this, designing here in SolidWorks, I went to Menards and found the bearing that I wanted to use, which is a 4-inch Lazy Susan bearing, basically. So it's got a 4-inch square, and you'll see it in just a second here. But so I'm using the dimensions from that to create this profile here, and so I knew I wanted to design a spacer that I could 3D print that would adapt this square pattern to the 4x100 pattern of the stock Miata wheel. So basically I needed it to have that pattern that I could bolt the Lazy Susan to, and then have a section that was large enough to have the wheel studs come through and put in 2 or 3 stock wheel studs and be able to bolt the wheel onto this spacer piece. And that would just kind of make things look cleaner and make it adapt to exactly what I needed to do and everything like that. So I have the capabilities, so that's what I did. And so I made the 2 profiles there, that square and then that circle, and then I made a loft between the 2 of them, which creates that 3D part there and makes it all cool and transitions and stuff. And so then I cut out the holes for the wheel studs. So I needed a smaller hole to go all the way through, and I needed a larger hole to go most of the way through, and that would kind of be the flange section of it. So that's what I'm doing right here, and then I actually go back later and make it a little bit bigger. And so that way the stud can go through, but won't go all the way through. Just the thread part will go through. And then I decided I didn't like this portion, so I changed it a little bit to have the sides kind of come in a little bit. And I do this quite often whenever I'm designing something, period, in 3D. This is what's really nice about designing in 3D, is that you can make it one way and then kind of go back and edit changes and just kind of make it exactly how you want it to be before you even have the end use part. And it's super easy to change at this stage, a little harder to change once you actually make the part. So then I needed a hole all the way through the center of it that would bring the air hose through the actual part, and then it would do a 90 and come out the side. So I cut the side hole right there. So this is where the air hose will come out and then go to the wheel. And that's where the hose will connect to it that wraps around the wheel. So then I just remove the wheel stud from that section there so that I don't want to use 3 bolts. Figured that would be plenty to mount it to the actual unit, to the wheel. And then I go back through and cut the holes that will mount it to the Lazy Susan. And then send it to the printer, print it out, and we're good to go. So after we get done with this, then we move on to the rest of the stuff. Alright, so I'm going to go over some of the pieces that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to start off with my fancy 3D printed part that I designed up and made there that you just saw. So this is going to connect to my bearing and then to the wheel. So I've got a bearing here. This is a little 4-inch Lazy Susan from Menards. I'll put a link in the description to something similar to this, or this exact one. We need some screws to mount stuff together. I'm going to put these small black screws through the Lazy Susan thing into the 3D printed part. And then I'm also going to show you that, you know, if you don't have a printer, you can make it with just like a 4x4 post or something similar. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. This is a 4x4 post, treated pine or whatever. And so there's the whole length of it there. I just chopped off a little 4-inch section of it there. You're going to need some wheel bolts and lug nuts to mount the wheel to either this piece or something similar to like a block of wood. So I'm going to use these big long deck screws to go from the bearing to the block of wood there. Going to need a short extension of air hose. This one's got a fancy swivel on the end of it, and I'm going to utilize that to be the swiveling point of the whole mechanism. So then I'm going to put a 90-degree fitting on there to give myself the angle inside the wheel from the center of the wheel out to the outside of the wheel. You'll see that in a second. A couple extra fittings, male and female quick connect fittings to go on this hose to connect it to the overall hose that we'll be wrapping up, and connect it back to the compressor. And last but not least, a wheel. So this one came on cinnamon, and it's a little cracked and bent up, as you can see, so I figured it'd be kind of cool to use this one. I've got a nice center cap with it there, so figured why not use this wheel. So, got all the pieces laid out. Now we just gotta assemble it. So, let's get going. Alright, so on the wood block here, what I did was I took a 1-inch spade bit here, 1 inch, and drilled a hole in the center of the block here, most of the way through, and then drilled a couple holes on the side here to kind of give it a slot. And so basically what's going to happen here is the hose is going to come from the compressor, feed into the hole right here, and it's going to come out of this hole, which will go through the bearing that'll be right there, and then through the 3D printed part that'll be right there at the end of it. So then the hose will come through the bearing, or through the printed part, and come out this hole right here on the side, which will then go to the outside of the wheel, and that'll be what wraps up the actual hose as you turn it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place the bearing Lazy Susan thingy on here, and then we'll attach the 3D printed hub thing onto the back of there. I had it mounted on the wheel, that's why it's a little dirty. So it'll be something like that. I might throw a coat of black on all this to kind of make it look a little bit cleaner and less noticeable. And then we'll bolt it to the wheel and try to test it out. And then I also drilled the holes here. You can see my 4x4 post is really, really tight for where the holes mount on this thing. And I got it really close there, marked out the holes, pre-drilled them. It is treated lumber, so it's really pretty soft and wet. But I went ahead and pre-drilled them anyway, tried to kind of angle them inward. And then I can run the actual deck screws into there. And then on the printed part, I actually had the holes laid out when I actually drew it up. So those were already kind of ready to go. Throw the screws in there, and then we should be able to put the wheel studs through here and bolt it onto the wheel. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I am a little bit worried about the screws holding into the 3D printed part here, since it's not actually solid inside of there. It's only about a 15% infill. So what I'm going to do to try to help some of that is I'm going to take some JB Weld here, mix that up, and spread it across here on this surface and to this surface here. So I took some sandpaper there and kind of scratched it up, gave it some grooves there. I scratched this up a little bit too, but I haven't really had much troubles with JB Weld trying to stick to 3D printed parts. So I'll lay that on there, and then put this piece onto there, flip it upside up, put it onto there, and then screw it in. And then hopefully between the screws and the JB Weld, it should hold together and be all right. So, do that now. All right, so here's the completed assembly. We've got the parts all hooked together, so the hose is going to come out of there. It'll come in, sorry, do this here. It'll come in through here, and then come up this way, come out up into the 3D printed part, where it'll come out of the hole here, and then go to the wheel. So, and that's the reason I only have 3 mounting holes on the wheel, is because it comes through right here, so I wouldn't really be able to get the lug through there. I could if I wanted to. I don't need all 3 to bolt it anyway. I probably only need 2, honestly. So, what I'm gonna do now is just kind of try to clean this thing up a little bit and make it black. So I'm going to just try to throw a coat of paint on the whole thing, and then see how it looks. And then we can mount it up to the wheel once it's all dried, and once all the JB Weld in there is dried. Alright, so if we go in here to the inside of my wheel, this is the 3D printed part right here. This is that little 90-degree fitting that I had. This is where the hose comes through. So the back there is the wood block, and basically what I did there is I wrapped some masking tape around the hose there to kind of give it a nice tight fit into the hole there. Otherwise it was kind of flopping around. And then that 90-degree fitting goes out of the 3D printed part right there and then connects to the hose right there. Kind of hard to see. And so basically, as this whole wheel rotates, it spins on that little pivot there, that little black pivot. So the hose inside of the wood block stays still, and then it pivots around that little joint there. So this allows me to keep the air pressure going through there because that little joint is made to do that, and then I can still rotate it without the actual hose, the supply hose, getting all twisted up and tangled. So that's how it works there. And then this hose runs down, connects to my air compressor right here, and yeah, boom, there we go. Alright guys, so I got it all mounted up to the wall here. I ended up cutting a little chunk out of the wheel there where it was already cracked, but I cut it a little bit more to get the hose to fit through there. There's enough gap behind the wall and the wheel to get it through there, which is where the supply hose comes from back here. But I wanted it to be kind of clipped onto the wheel there, so it has a little grip. Let's see if I can get it to focus here. There, it had a little grip. That's this black part over here that was slid all the way up to the end there, so I just kind of slid that down so that it wouldn't cut the hose right there. And so far so good. I might have to change something a little bit more there. The quick connect fitting right there is a little bit tricky to get to. I had to put the hose on there and then put the wheel onto the hub. So just kind of one thing. If I made this quick connect extend out a little bit longer and come out to the end of the wheel, maybe it would be a little bit better. But I basically just screwed the block into the wall there after I got it all painted black. And then now I can just grab some hose, pull it out, go use it and do whatever I need to do, and then just reel it back up. Boom. Pretty neat little doohickey. I think it was definitely worth the time. The one thing I would notice, the Lazy Susan bearing thing that I got is a little bit wobbly. It's not super sturdy. It's not really designed to be side-loaded like this. It's designed for an axial load, like weighted down on it there. So we'll see how it lasts. It may kind of wear out, but this isn't going to be like a high-use situation, so it'll probably be okay. But just one thing to know if you want to make your own. But that's really pretty much it. And with that, that's going to be a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And please make sure to give this video a like. And that's going to be it. I'll have a link in the description to some of the parts that I used here. And where you can get them to make your own hose reel just like this. And yeah, that's going to be it. So thank you guys for watching. Peace out.